The ego is not master in its own house. Out of your vulnerabilities will come your strength. Unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. The mind is like an iceberg. It floats with 1/7 of its bulk above water. One day, in retrospect, the years of struggle will strike you as the most beautiful. Where ID was, there ego shall be. Most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. The voice of the intellect is a soft one, but it does not rest until it has gained a hearing. The first human who hurled an insult instead of a stone was the founder of civilization. Being entirely honest with oneself is a good exercise. Where does a thought go when it's forgotten? I cannot think of any need in childhood as strong as the need for a father's protection. The more the fruits of knowledge become accessible to men, the more widespread is the decline of religious belief. Love and work are the cornerstones of our humanness. Everywhere I go, I find a poet has been there before me. Words have a magical power. They can bring either the greatest happiness or deepest despair. He that has eyes to see and ears to hear may convince himself that no mortal can keep a secret. If his lips are silent, he chatters with his fingertips. Betrayal oozes out of him at every pore. The great question that has never been answered, and which I have not yet been able to answer, despite my 30 years of research into the feminine soul, is: what does a woman want? I have found little that is good about human beings on the whole. In my experience, most of them are trash. No matter whether they publicly subscribe to this or that ethical doctrine or to none at all. That is something that you cannot say aloud, or perhaps even think. Flowers are restful to look at. They have neither emotions nor conflicts. The conscious mind may be compared to a fountain playing in the sun and falling back into the great subterranean pool of subconscious from which it rises. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. A civilization which leaves so large a number of its participants unsatisfied and drives them into revolt neither has nor deserves the prospect of a lasting existence. Whoever loves becomes humble. Those who love have, so to speak, pawned a part of their narcissism. Neurosis is the inability to tolerate ambiguity. Every normal person, in fact, is only normal on the average. His ego approximates to that of the psychotic in some part or other and to a greater or lesser extent. The tendency to aggression is an innate, independent, instinctual disposition in man. It constitutes the powerful obstacle to culture. A man who has been the indisputable favorite of his mother keeps for life the feeling of a conqueror. Men are strong so long as they represent a strong idea. They become powerless when they oppose it. We are never so defenseless against suffering as when we love. Men are more moral than they think and far more moral than they can imagine. Man has, as it were, become a kind of prosthetic god. When he puts on all his auxiliary organs, he is truly magnificent, but those organs have not grown on him and they still give him much trouble at times. Delusions commend themselves to us because they save us pain and allow us to enjoy pleasure instead. We must therefore accept it without complaint when they sometimes collide with a bit of reality against which they are dashed to pieces. What we call happiness in the strictest sense comes from the, preferably sudden, satisfaction of needs which have been dammed up to a high degree. What a distressing contrast there is between the radiant intelligence of the child and the feeble mentality of the average adult. Just as no one can be forced into belief, so no one can be forced into unbelief. Love and work. Work and love. That's all there is.